Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to look at running on tired legs. Now this is one of those phrases that gets kind of thrown about, doesn't really have too much of a defined kind of what that is, what that means, or really kind of what the benefits are. It's just something that people kind of say, like, oh, time on feet. But ultimately it's not really about that, it's about many other things that kind of feed into that, and it's a simplification. That said, the running on tired legs, it can have some benefits in a lot of respects. So if that gives you some confidence, and if that means that you kind of get used to running when you are slightly more fatigued, then there can be some useful tips. However, it really isn't that big a thing a lot of the time, and really there are a lot of downsides potentially depending on how it's done. Now, running on tired legs, commonly done by either double run days or running two longer or harder sessions back-to-back days. Now, both of these options pose greater risks, they're more logistically challenging, and ultimately can mean that you end up having to take away quality elsewhere in your week, which would be really beneficial in order to do this running on tired legs thing. So if you look at the example of a double run day, often this is done 2 runs in one day, obviously morning and evening, or early morning and afternoon. Very rarely is it done afternoon and evening, or midday and evening, just logistically speaking. Morning and evening, okay, great. So most of the time people are going to want to do a fast session and an easy session. Now a lot of people won't want to do a fast session in the morning, especially when they've got to run later in the day and they've got to put some effort in, so they'll often put in a morning easy run. That is not a good idea, because you are either not going to do a lot, but when you then come into the easy evening session, you are slightly more tired, come from an energy point of view, but actually you've not really done much to the muscles, because that easy run is very, very easy to recover from. You're not doing a lot to it. So you're adding volume, but you're not really adding that intensity. Equally, when you are then running maybe slightly more tired with less energy, you're going to be moving worse. Your risk of injury is potentially slightly higher. So that is a really big downside and a big risk factor in marathon training anyway. The flip side of that is to run early in the morning and do a hard session with then running easier in the evening. Now that can work. If you're going to double run day, that is 100% the way to go about it, and it's not a bad idea potentially in that context to add volume if you need to have a day off elsewhere in the week where logistically you just can't run because you're traveling or you're working or family commitments or whatever. That said, the morning runs hard are tough to do, so you're probably going to end up running a slightly less effective session you otherwise would do, and then running in the evening easy. Okay, absolutely fine. There's very little low risk on that one, so that's fine. However, again, you are losing potentially some capacity elsewhere to do either a longer, easier run, or to run a harder, better session by running in the evening on a one run day only. The other idea is to do back-to-back days. You put slightly harder efforts and slightly longer runs. Now again, the injury risk here is much, much higher. And I don't know about you, but when I've had to do this or chosen to do this in the past, you end up compromising on both. Very, very rarely you actually put in a good session on both. The first one you've always got you on, the second one, and the second one you're already a bit tired and going, actually, I can't really do much on this one. So you end up losing the benefit of both of those, and again, you're much better separating those out. Now there are other things you can do as well. So I've seen different session types, and this is something that I've seen professionals use, and then amateur runners or amateur coaches have kind of gone, hey, we should do this is great fun. Such as kind of basically doing bodyweight exercises interspersed with efforts. Now, again, that can work. You are tiring the legs to some degree with some lunges, some squats, and then you're going off and doing an 800 meter or 1,000 meter rep or something like that. Can work, but generally this is done by professionals under the coaching of a professional instructor who's really working with maybe 5 or 6 athletes, maybe a few more, but not much, and it's a big coaching group. In the context of something like a running club or just a few friends going and doing, not a very good idea, because again, you're going to be probably tiring at the muscles so much or moving poorly in those exercises to get it done really quickly and then get on the run, that your running is compromised or your exercise technique is compromised, neither of which we really want to do. We're jumping around, if we're doing lunges, taking our joints to bigger ranges of motion, really taxing those, to then run, we're doing opposite things entirely. Can have some benefits if executed really, really well with great technique and with control. However, that's often not going to be the case for most of us amateur runners like myself. So that isn't a good idea either. So ultimately, working on tired legs, you're going to move worse, you're going to have less effective sessions in all likelihood, and your injury risk is much, much, much higher. The other overall arching theme is really how much of a benefit is it going to have? Very minimal, because there's nothing that prepares you for the fatigue you feel on marathon day. You can get it in half marathons as well, where you're working really hard, 8, 9, 10 miles in, and your legs are fried. You cannot really mimic that type of session in the middle of your training at any point, other than maybe doing some ridiculously hard efforts, which again pose an injury risk and can be used very sparingly. So there's always a compromise somewhere along the line. You're increasing risk of injury, you're compromising the quality of your fitness elsewhere just for that, oh, I'm getting used to running on tired legs. And it's still going to suck. Getting used to running on tired legs doesn't ever really happen. You might experience it, but if you're doing a few races, if you've done a few marathons or if you're half marathons, you are to a degree used to that. You're probably about as used as you're ever going to get to it. You find mental tactics. That's the way you can get better at doing that realistically. So practice some mantras, use music, use whatever you need to do, but don't batter your body to get better at it. Work on your mind would be my first tip realistically if you want to get used to running on tired legs.